Hi, good morning.
64? 74? John Arthur Getreu is 74, a quiet homeowner in Hayward, California. He believes this is an ordinary meeting. He has no idea the person he's talking to is an undercover officer, or that a decades-old secret is about to snap into the light.
I'm so sorry. I was turning around in your driveway and I accidentally hit your car.
Which one?
The one parked in the driveway.
Yeah, there's two of them. Or is it that one now?
Yeah. Do you want to maybe take a look to see if we should exchange insurance information?
This is John Getreu, a 74-year-old man living in Hayward, California. He's about to be arrested for a string of serial killings committed years ago.
Sheriff's on. Yeah, go ahead. Sheriff, on your back. Face the car. Go ahead, face the car. All right, watch this. We'll talk to you in a minute. Do a quick pat. Anybody else in the house? No, my wife's at work. You adjust the handcuff?
Yeah, we'll take care of that in a minute, right?
All right.
Just a dog in the house?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the only thing I do.
Through advanced DNA technology, investigators connected Getreu to a series of brutal murders that haunted California for decades. And now, after half a century of freedom, John Getreu is about to face justice.
We had no idea what was going on, and my husband's off, and he was like, something's going on. There's cops everywhere yesterday, and it was scary because this is a really quiet neighborhood, and we never have anything like this happen here.
The following program contains content that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. February 16th, 1973. The search had been going on for 3 days. Deputies on horseback moved slowly through the wooded hills west of Stanford University, scanning the ground beneath the trees. By that point, hope was beginning to fade. The young woman they were searching for had vanished without a trace, and every passing hour made the outcome feel more certain. Then one of the mounted deputies noticed something unusual beneath a large oak tree. At first, it looked like a pile of clothing. He guided his horse closer. What he found would become one of California's most haunting cold cases. Lying face down beneath the branches was 21-year-old Leslie Marie Perlov. Her skirt had been pulled up. A scarf was wrapped tightly around her neck, and under her fingernails, investigators would eventually discover the evidence that could identify her killer. The problem was that it would take 45 years for science to catch up. For nearly half a century, Leslie's family would wait for answers. Detectives would retire, evidence boxes would gather dust, and the man responsible would go on living an ordinary life, raising a family and blending into his community. Nobody around him knew they were living next door to a murderer, because on that February afternoon in 1973, the killer was still free, and no one even knew his name. 21-year-old Leslie Perlov had a future that seemed almost limitless. She had recently graduated from Stanford University and had already earned a scholarship to attend law school at the University of Pennsylvania. Friends and family described her as intelligent, driven, and deeply compassionate. She had the kind of mind that seemed capable of anything. To her younger brother and sister, she was more than a sibling. She was a protector and a role model. Years later, her sister Diane would remember the laughter they shared and the emptiness that filled their home whenever Leslie left for school. She wasn't simply another student. She was the person everyone expected to accomplish great things. And in the winter of 1973, it looked like she was just getting started. Before leaving for Pennsylvania, Leslie decided to stay in California and save some money. She accepted a job as a clerk at the North County Law Library in Palo Alto. The work was temporary. Her future was elsewhere. Law school, a legal career, a life she was building one careful step at a time. Tuesday, February 13th, began like any other workday. There was nothing unusual about it. No warning. No indication that by nightfall, Leslie would be missing. She finished her shift at approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She walked outside and climbed into her car, a bright orange 1972 Chevrolet Nova. That car would soon become one of the most recognizable images in the investigation. For reasons that remain unclear, Leslie drove toward the foothills west of Stanford. The area was beautiful but isolated. Rolling hills, dense patches of oak trees, narrow roads winding through open countryside. Eventually, she reached an old abandoned rock quarry near the intersection of Page Mill Road and Old Page Mill Road. A security gate blocked the entrance. Leslie parked her car nearby. She turned off the engine, locked the vehicle, stepped outside, and walked into the hills. No one knows exactly why. No one knows what she intended to do there, and no one ever saw her alive again. When Leslie failed to return home that evening, her family immediately knew something was wrong. This wasn't like her. She was responsible. Dependable. The kind of person who called. The kind of person who showed up. Hours passed. Then came the phone calls. Friends were contacted. Hospitals were checked. Eventually, police were notified. The search began. Later that night, officers discovered her orange Chevrolet Nova parked near the quarry gate. The vehicle was locked. Nothing appeared disturbed. But Leslie was gone. There was no sign of a struggle, no obvious evidence, no indication of where she had gone. Only an abandoned car and a growing sense that something terrible had happened. The search quickly expanded. The terrain was difficult. Steep hills, heavy brush, deep ravines. Dozens of deputies, volunteers, and mounted search teams combed through the area. As one day turned into 2, and 2 became 3, hope slowly gave way to fear. Then, on Friday afternoon, everything changed. A mounted deputy spotted something beneath a large oak tree. The search was over. Leslie had been found. The scene that greeted investigators was deeply disturbing. She was lying face down on the ground. Her skirt had been pulled above her waist. Her underwear and pantyhose had been removed. Stuffed into her mouth, wrapped around her neck was a floral scarf. The scarf belonged to her sister. Just days earlier, Diane had loaned it to Leslie. Now it had become the instrument used to kill her. The medical examiner later determined that Leslie had been strangled. There was also evidence of a sexual assault. But something else immediately caught the attention of investigators. Leslie's fingernails. They were jagged, broken, damaged. To experienced detectives, the meaning was obvious. She had fought. Hard. In her final moments, Leslie had clawed at her attacker. She had scratched him. Possibly torn skin from his face or hands. In 1973, detectives didn't have DNA profiling. There were no genetic databases, no forensic genealogy, no technology capable of turning microscopic skin cells into a name. But they understood something important. Those fingernails might matter someday. So investigators carefully clipped them, packaged the evidence, and placed it into storage. Without realizing it, they had just preserved the key to solving the murder. The investigation exploded. Detectives interviewed friends, co-workers, and acquaintances. They examined her routines, tracked her movements, looked for witnesses. Nothing. Then another horrifying possibility began to emerge. Leslie's murder might not be an isolated crime. Over the next 2 years, several young women connected to Stanford University would be murdered. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Young women, sexual assaults, strangulation, bodies abandoned in isolated locations. Fear spread through the campus. Students who had once walked alone suddenly traveled in groups. Doors were locked. Parents worried. Rumors circulated. Some believed a serial killer was hunting women around Stanford. Others wondered whether the murders were connected at all. Investigators chased leads in multiple directions. But no matter where they looked, they kept reaching dead ends. Years passed, then decades. The headlines disappeared. The public moved on, but Leslie's family never did. Every birthday, every holiday, every anniversary, the same questions remained. Who killed her? Why? And how could someone commit such a brutal crime and simply disappear? Inside an evidence room, the answer waited. Tiny cardboard boxes containing fingernail clippings sat quietly on a shelf for 45 years, waiting for a future that no one in 1973 could possibly imagine. Because somewhere in California, the man who murdered Leslie Perlov had built an entirely different life. He had married, raised children, worked regular jobs, volunteered in his community. To neighbors, he appeared completely ordinary, harmless, respectable. But the truth was something far darker. And when science finally caught up with him, it wouldn't just solve Leslie Perlov's murder. It would expose a predator who had spent decades hiding in plain sight. 21-year-old Leslie Perlov seemed to have everything going for her. She had already accomplished more than most people her age. A recent graduate of Stanford University, Leslie had earned a scholarship to attend law school at the University of Pennsylvania. Friends believed she had the kind of mind that could take her anywhere. She was intelligent, ambitious, and fiercely independent. But to her family, those accomplishments weren't what mattered most. To her younger sister Diane and her brother Craig, Leslie was their protector. She was the person who gave advice, made people laugh, and somehow made everyone around her feel safe. Years later, Diane would remember the sound of Leslie's laughter more than anything else. When Leslie had left home for college, the house immediately felt different. Quieter. Empty. No one imagined they would one day have to learn how to live without her entirely. In early 1973, Leslie was in a transitional period of life. Law school was still months away. Until then, she had taken a job as a clerk at the North County Law Library in Palo Alto. The work wasn't glamorous. It was simply a way to save money before beginning the next chapter of her life. She had plans. Big ones. And on the morning of February 13th, there was absolutely no reason to believe those plans would never happen. The day began like any other. Co-workers saw nothing unusual about Leslie's behavior. No signs of distress. No indications that she felt threatened. Nothing to suggest she was in danger. She completed her work and clocked out at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Then she climbed into her orange Chevrolet Nova. For investigators, that car would later become one of the most important pieces of the puzzle, because the next few hours would raise questions that remain unanswered to this day. For reasons nobody has ever been able to fully explain, Leslie drove west toward the foothills near Stanford University. The area was scenic and quiet. Rolling hills, oak trees, narrow roads. The kind of place where people went to hike, think, or simply enjoy a little solitude. At some point, she reached an old abandoned quarry near the intersection of Page Mill Road and Old Page Mill Road. A security gate blocked the entrance. Leslie parked her car nearby. She turned off the engine, locked the vehicle, and then she walked into the hills. Why? That question has followed this case for more than 50 years. Was she meeting someone? Did she simply want to take a walk? Did she know her killer? Or did she encounter a predator entirely by chance? Nobody knows. What investigators do know is this: Leslie never came back. As the afternoon turned into evening, concern began to grow. Her family expected to hear from her. They didn't. Hours passed. Still nothing. The worry slowly became fear. By nighttime, family members knew something was terribly wrong. Police were contacted. Friends and acquaintances were called. Hospitals were checked. No one had seen her. No one knew where she was. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Later that evening, officers located Leslie's orange Chevrolet Nova near the quarry gate. The car was locked. Nothing appeared to be missing. No obvious signs of violence. No broken glass. No blood. No indication of what had happened. It was as though she had simply stepped away from her car and vanished into thin air. The location immediately concerned investigators. The hills west of Stanford were vast and rugged. Dense brush covered much of the terrain. There were steep inclines, hidden ravines, and countless places where someone could easily become lost. The Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office took control of the search. Deputies, volunteers, and mounted units began combing the area. As the first night passed, hope remained. Perhaps Leslie had become injured. Perhaps she had wandered off the trails. Perhaps she would be found alive. But when the second day came and went, optimism began to disappear. The search grew larger. More personnel arrived. More ground was covered. Every hour that passed made the situation seem more serious. Then came the third day. By then, many of the people involved in the search had begun preparing themselves for the possibility that they weren't looking for a missing woman anymore. They were looking for a body. On February 16th, those fears became reality. A mounted deputy noticed something beneath a large oak tree. At first, it didn't register. The shape was partially hidden by brush and low branches. Then he looked closer. The search was over. The nightmare was just beginning. News of Leslie's death spread quickly through the Stanford community. Students were horrified. Parents were terrified. A promising young woman had disappeared in broad daylight and been found murdered only a few miles from campus. The details of the crime scene made it even worse. This hadn't been an accident. This hadn't been a robbery. This was murder. And whoever had done it had shown extraordinary violence. Investigators began processing the scene. Every item mattered. Every piece of evidence could be the key to identifying the killer. Then they noticed Leslie's hands. Her fingernails were broken and jagged. To seasoned detectives, it was immediately clear what that meant. She had fought for her life. In her final moments, Leslie had clawed at her attacker. She had injured him. And if she had managed to tear away even the smallest piece of skin, she might have left behind something incredibly valuable. But in 1973, no one yet understood just how valuable that evidence would become. The tiny biological traces found beneath her fingernails would sit in an evidence locker for 45 years, waiting. Because long before anyone knew his name, long before DNA databases and forensic genealogy existed, Leslie Perlov had already left investigators exactly what they would one day need: the identity of her killer. She just didn't live long enough to see it used.